Springfield's Talk 1041 and a good Thursday morning, everyone. We are just one day away from a couple of different things. Well, Friday being one of them, which means the Friday Road Show at Scramblers, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. It is also a first responders breakfast. Barker's Frame and Collision, Pyramid Roofing Company, and Scramblers buying breakfast tomorrow morning as we broadcast live from 6A to 9A. And you're going to get free breakfast. So how about that? Law enforcement, fire. You don't have to be in Springfield, by the way. We had one department from a surrounding city say, well, we're not in Springfield. It doesn't matter. That's cool. You know, everyone is welcome within earshot. Anyway, if you're in law enforcement, you're EMT, you're fire, you are first responders, you are welcome to join us for free breakfast at Scramblers on Friday. Now, those of you who are going to be joining us on our trip to the Dominican Republic for the Great Escape coming up in April, we will also be meeting at Scramblers for our FAQ and to get you the documents. The kitchen will be closed. Scramblers is actually closed. They close in mid-afternoon. They are a breakfast and lunch location, so we will have the place to ourselves. Kitchen, so, you know, there will not be food. We're going to try to really expedite things. That way you can all get your weekend going. You can eat beforehand. You can eat afterwards if you'd like. We're not going to rush you, so don't feel like, oh, we got questions, but we shouldn't ask. But we just want to make it as quick as possible for you, and that will be tomorrow at Scramblers. If you have any questions regarding it, just reach out, and I know all of you should have Cam's contact info, so you can, of course, reach out to her as well. And it seemed like there was something else I was going to mention. But I can't. I mean, that seems like the relevant info, doesn't it?
I think that was about it.
Now, I did mention Pyramid Roofing Company. They are also sponsoring, which we have at KSGF.com, our Best Biden Moment bracket that we have going on. And it is, of course, in conjunction with March Madness, but instead of teams, we've got the Biden moments, and you go vote every week that you cast your vote. You get an entry for the prize provided by Pyramid Roofing Company, which is a 10-ounce silver Mount Trumpmore bar of silver. And it is on, you can see it if you go to the contest page there, and there's a link. So you can see that 10 ounces of silver, which is depiction of Mount Rushmore, and then Trump is on it, as well as the other 4 presidents that occupy Mount Rushmore. And it's not a winning based off of how well your choices do for the bracket, but again, every week that you do participate is an entry into that, and that is also at ksgf.com. There are a few other things there. I won't go through the entire listing. You can see them while you are there. Trump has announced that he's going to do live play-by-play of Biden's State of the Union address. I
That's
swear,
gonna be awesome.
has he not done this before?
I don't think he has.
I really think that in my head, and I could be totally wrong, he's done this, but it wasn't really preceded with an announcement that it's going to be an official play-by-play. Maybe in my mind, it's just very difficult to believe that he hasn't tweeted during a past State of the Union of Joe Biden's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it just seems like that's what he does. And maybe I'm wrong about this. Donald Trump is the only high-level elected official that I actually believe puts out his own tweets. Now, that isn't to say that there isn't at times when you have somebody that is relatively high-level and well-known in politics that says to an aide, hey, why don't you get something out on this? But, you know, I think we all probably recognize that when Joe Biden is tweeting out, it's not actually Joe Biden. When Kamala Harris does, it's not actually they have people that do these things. Trump, even when he was president, I just, in my mind, I could see him pulling that phone out and sending out tweets during meetings. And you know that a play-by-play during the State of the Union address is something that he is actually doing himself. He put out the following message, quote, I'm pleased to inform you that tomorrow night we will be doing a live play-by-play of crooked Joe Biden's State of the Union address. This is what I said. It was a tweet, Truth Social. He went on to Truth. I will correct in rapid response any and all inaccurate statements, especially pertaining to the border and his weaponization of the DOJ, FBI, AGs, and district attorneys to go after his political opponent. Me, something never done before in this country. We did this once before to tremendous success, beating all records. It is important for the country to get the truth in all caps. And this, course, is going to be carried tonight. The question is, will Joe Biden crash and burn? And if not, what drugs and how much of them will they have pumped him full of in order to make it through? Is he going to have the eyes going, like his eyes are all big? Or will his eyes, pupils be so dilated that he wears aviators for his State of the Union? So many questions for tonight. But the one thing we've talked about, I think that everyone can prepare for this if you're going to stomach through watching it. If not, of course, it'll be covered tomorrow in the broadcast, I'm sure, on this station throughout the day. It is going to be all about how the border isn't fixed because of Republicans. The economy is doing fantastic, except for where business owners have conspired to all get together and raise prices on you to take advantage of you. And then we'll also hear about how how important NATO is. And how dangerous the idea of having a president, Donald Trump, of course, come along and destroy NATO and these alliances. And I'm sure that there will also be accusations thrown about how it is that, if you don't support Ukraine, then you are a supporter of Vladimir Putin. And it's just going to be a lot of very dark, evil, painting certain segments of the American population as totally evil. Abortion, we're going to hear all sorts of stuff, I'm sure, about abortion. In fact, I believe that in some of the listings I've seen of guests of the White House, there's going to be some people who are there because, they weren't able to, supposedly, they weren't able to kill their children because of abortion laws. There are going to be a number of union people. Now, one thing I did find interesting as I scoured through the listing of individuals that are going to be there as a guest of the White House, what I didn't see this time that I am pretty sure I know for a fact was a category of individual that has been a guest of the Biden administration during the State of the Union before. And I didn't see anybody that was here in the country illegally, or anybody that was the recipient of the DREAM Act, kids who came here illegally and with an unconstitutional wave of the magic wand were told, don't worry, you have to go back. I know I in the past, because I remember talking about here, it's insane here in the United States of America, while if you are an American who, without invitation, walked into the Capitol, you could go to prison for years. But if you come into this country illegally, you get invited by the President of the United States to sit in the State of the Union address, to be honored and applauded by an entire political party. The insanity of that. But it's so odd that there doesn't appear to be anyone invited by the White House that would in any way, shape, or form highlight the importance of illegal immigrants to our country, to our economy, to our culture, something that the Democrats have done in the past. Now, I wonder why that is. It's just quite a mystery why it is that the White House would choose to leave that category of praiseworthy individual out of the State of the Union address. Maybe they'll do a last-minute edition. Maybe some will just, that would be an interesting conundrum, if there were some individuals in the country illegally, because of invitation, decided to illegally try and enter the State of the Union address. Would they be treated with open arms as they have been into the country, or would they be held accountable? I don't know what would happen in that sort of situation. I suspect it will not happen. Who knows? They could get the Ashley Babbitt treatment, be unarmed, and just get executed by Capitol Police. We'll have a look at the weather coming up as we see thunderstorms coming through much of the area already overnight and into this morning. Right now, the latest news update. The first alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Thunderstorms throughout the day today, high near 60. Showers, storms tonight, 53. 90% chance of showers and storms tomorrow, high near 62. And Saturday, mostly sunny, a high near 50. Ozark Stove and Chimney, your neighborhood full-service chimney inspection, sweep, service company, wide variety of freestanding wood stoves, fireplace inserts. Experts are friendly. They are fast. They are bringing the world of chimney and fireplace maintenance into the modern era. Before I began using Ozark Stove and Chimney, before I even knew about them, I'd have, an annual sweep done, and it was what I thought was pretty standard. It seemed somewhat old school, but I suppose there was a charm to that. And then Ozark Stove and Chimney, you book your appointments, you get communication back telling you who your tech's going to be when they're on the way. I got a text message, and here's a picture of them. This is what they look like. And then just the technological tools that they utilize, having a camera scope up into the chimney and then a color monitor showing you what the inside of your chimney looks like. It was so far beyond what I was accustomed to, and probably you too, unless you also use Ozark Stove and Chimney. And if you do not, for all of your chimney, fireplace, wood stove needs, I highly recommend that you do. And it doesn't matter what time of season it is. You think, oh, well, we're getting out of the real cold winter stuff. It's a good time to do it. Great time to do it, in fact. OzarkStoveandChimney.com. You can also find them at KSGF.com under Nick's endorsement. Someone texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Red Eye Radio reported that the Capitol maintenance crew is installing handicap handrails going to and around the congressional podium for tonight's State of the Union address with arrow decals on the floor, helping Joe Biden not getting lost tonight. Now, I did not hear that, but I guess that would make sense. That component to this, I frankly had not even thought of. I've been thinking so much about just, number one, how long is it going to be? I can't imagine it being that long. Is he is he going to make it through it? Is he going to get lost? Is he going to get thrown off? Is he going to, this is where I think Republicans, if they really wanted to, could create a display of things, and that is to jeer or to laugh at some point, prompting Biden to not be able to help himself and ad-lib, right?
Yeah, I think
get him to ad-lib.
I think that the second that the Republicans boo or they start shouting or, just any kind of sound, it is going to throw him off.
Yeah, because he's going to feel compelled to respond. And then that's where he always really gets tripped up, is that response. And then, going back to, can you imagine if there was a teleprompter issue?
Oh, that would be something.
Yeah, that's happened once before, and it was when Clinton was president. I think Stephanopoulos wrote about this, and they were trying to make some last-minute changes to the State of the Union address. And I don't recall exactly why there were last-minute changes that they felt were so important, and they were like cramming and rushing to do it. And it was, I'm sure that the technological advancements are between the 90s versus today much different. And there was a lot of rushing around, and something happened to where it wasn't uploading to where the teleprompter had it ready in time, or there was some glitch. And so Clinton got up there, the applause stops, and there's nothing there. And Clinton, being with it, and also a pretty sharp guy, called for a moment of silence. There was, I believe it was a train derailment that had happened sometime in the days, or maybe even that day, of the State of the Union. There was some sort of incident in which a number of people died. And Clinton, of course, was aware that happened, and so he called for a moment of silence and basically held that moment of silence until he saw that the State of the Union address had been loaded up and was, populating the screen. Yeah, the screen there. And I've always thought that's pretty, smart. There's no way Joe Biden could ever do anything like that. There's no way he could do anything like that. It is going to be something to watch. The White House has gotten to the point, and I find this to be a little bit humorous. You can tell that they are tired of trying to, Karine Jean-Pierre specifically, are getting tired of trying to pretend as if Joe Biden is all there. And they still do this largely, of course. But Karine Jean-Pierre constantly having to, this, and she's being made a mockery of. And I think SNL did a great job of illustrating the absurdity of these Democrats that say behind closed doors, he's just the sharpest, smartest guy in the room. He just runs circles around. I can barely keep up with him. She was asked by a reporter yesterday why it was that even when he went down to the border, and it's supposed, he goes down to the border, and this is supposed to be not necessarily casual, but it's informational, and he's there to learn and ask questions. Why it was even there he had to have note cards to look at.
If I may, the president, I noticed, has note cards at the border when he was doing his briefing there. He also had note cards last Friday with the Italian prime minister. Why does the president rely so heavily on note cards?
You're upset because the president has note cards? You're asking me a question about the president having note cards?
I'm asking why.
The president who has had probably one of the most successful first 3 years of an administration than any modern day president. He's done more in the first 3 years than most presidents who had 2 terms. You're asking me about note cards? I don't. Wait, I'm not speaking to you right now, James. I'm talking to your friend over here, Ed. So thank you so much. But thank you so much for interjecting. Go ahead, Ed.
I was just asking why he relies so heavily on the cards.
I think what's important here and what the American people care about is how this president is delivering for them. And that's what he's doing. And that's what's the most important thing here.
So there's been, and I think it is, again, out of frustration, this shift from trying to claim, no, he's just brilliant, he's bright, to a bit of a gaslighting scenario.
She's like, maybe if I'm mean to them, they'll go away.
Maybe if I act like the question is stupid.
Right.
You know, you're asking about note cards, like, you idiot. Why would you ask about that's really what you want to know about? Now, oddly enough, it is a really ridiculous question, not because it isn't a problem, but we all know why. I mean, we all know. Everyone knows. The reporter's asking the question, and there was, I don't know, I don't think it was Peter Ducey that was asking the question, but at some point somebody else jumped in because she was like, well, we just want to know the answer to this question. But again, the reality is everyone knows. Everyone knows why. And Karine Jean-Pierre knows why. And Karine Jean-Pierre knows that the press corps knows why. And they know that we all know why. It's because he's senile. But to some degree, the question, yeah, I guess it does need to be asked in order to, I guess, to keep focus on it so people know, but people do know already, I guess. These events, these daily briefings, are largely, completely, in reality, irrelevant in terms of really asking questions for the purposes of getting new information. And again, for the reasons that I noted, we all know the answer to the question. And we all know that they're going to just make up some sort of absurd answer to the question. And they know that we know that. This is all theater. And it's just, this is how degraded the level of intellectualism has become at these press conferences. I mean, for Pete's sakes, when you have the President of the United States quoting Cookie Monster, we live in a Sesame Street type world where everything is although Sesame Street actually has, or it used to when many of us were kids, some pretty valuable learning life lessons for young people. There's more value that comes out of an episode of Sesame Street than comes out of the White House on a daily basis. We've got a bit more audio coming up. Oh, including, if you all haven't seen Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she was asked by a reporter some questions yesterday, and oh man, have I got something sweet for you this morning. I mean, it is fantastic. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, we're going to get a traffic update, more audio coming up, including you and I, we know we listen to the media try and convince, sometimes themselves, but the audience that Joe Biden is fit. But Joe Scarborough on MSNBC made comments, I believe it was yesterday morning. Now, we talk about how these folks were delusional. Listen, I'm telling you, when you listen to Joe Scarborough yesterday, there really genuinely is something wrong with him. When you hear he believes it. He believes, he was making the argument yesterday that Joe Biden is at the top of his game of his entire career. He's not only not incoherent, but the Joe Biden that America has today is the best that Joe Biden has ever been, the sharpest he's ever been. And you can hear it in Scarborough's voice. He believes this. This is a person that is paid by a network in order to inform the audience as to what's going on in the world. Let's do a traffic update. Also, a look at the weather coming up in moments. I'm Nick Reed. The First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Thunderstorms throughout the day. Today, a high near 60. Shower storms tonight, 53 for a low. A 90% chance of showers and storms tomorrow with a high near 62. Then mostly sunny with a high near 50 on Saturday. On the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, referencing someone had texted in that they heard on Red Eye Radio. They were talking about how Capitol Hill Maintenance, they were creating, I guess, sort of what one would think of as handicap accessible rails and so forth up to the podium perhaps, and little markers so that he knows where to go, because those are two of his biggest challenges. I can't believe this is a conversation about the President of the United States. Two of his biggest challenges, stairs, and where to go when he's done talking. And so, okay, it kind of makes sense. And the text says the cards are just pictures of different flavors of ice cream that he could possibly get if he does a good job. Who's a good boy? That could be. If Republicans really wanted to have fun, as we mentioned earlier, any sort of perhaps jeering or laughing in a mocking manner at any claims that Biden makes could very well throw him off, because he will potentially feel compelled to go off script and to make some sort of quip at them, which is when the wheels oftentimes go off the rails. But what can you imagine if they just if they decided to randomly make chicken noises or something, or just go boop? These where even a normal person would maybe be thrown off. Like, wait a minute, what is that? Or put little birthday party hats on all at one time or one at a time. It would just be really, really worth seeing it. And, of course, they would be ripped for it. But watching how Biden would try to manage his way through that. Though, we would be told, regardless of what happens, by the likes of Joe Scarborough on MSNBC, that he handled it brilliantly, even if he pooped his pants, screamed, and then just started running around in circles until he hit a wall and knocked himself out. And we would be told that that's the most presidential thing ever, and that Donald Trump would never handle it that well. This is Joe Scarborough yesterday, who is beside himself in disbelief that anyone could even conceivably believe that Donald Trump is sharper than Joe Biden. And you can hear the genuine delusion in his voice.
But comparing that guy's mental state, I've said it for years now, he's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent.
We're talking about Biden.
He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically, because he's been around for 50 years. And, you know, I don't know if people know this or not. Biden used to be a hothead. Sometimes that Irishman would get in front of the reasoning. Sometimes he would say things he didn't want to say. This is, and I don't really, you know what? I don't really care. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it. And you.
Last week's cold open of SNL was mocking these defenders of Joe Biden who were claiming that he was sharp, that, you know, behind closed doors, oh, you should see him. He's just, you know, amazing. And that's what the entire cold open was. It was not mocking Joe Biden, but these people who continue to pretend as if Joe Biden is fine. It is as if Joe Scarborough said, I'm going to outdo the mocking caricature that was done by SNL of the defenders of Joe Biden. I have to believe that the people that are panelists on that show were embarrassed by what they were hearing. The supporters of Joe Biden had to be thinking, he may want to pull it back just a little bit here. I mean, SNL is NBC, and this is MSNBC, so they're all part of the same family there. Years ago, back when Joe Scarborough was a Republican in Congress, back when he was part of the Newt Gingrich Contract with America crew, and that's when he first started getting a national name, because he was one of the more well-spoken, he was kind of snarky, he was a young Republican member of Congress. I think he got sworn in with the 104th, that Contract with America sweep during the Clinton years. And so Joe Scarborough was, to some degree, in terms of notoriety, I'd say like Jim Jordan is today, or Trey Gowdy was before he left, though not as sharp necessarily. But he loved to be out there, and he so he was on television a lot, and he did a pretty good job of getting the point across. And again, he was kind of snarky, so that helped. And I was at that point in time, I'm young, really for the very first time following politics, so I knew of him and thought, oh, I like that guy, he was somebody that I liked. And I was on a cruise. I may have still been, I think I was still a teenager. If not, I was just barely into my 20s. And on cruise ships, you talk, you meet new people, and end up having a conversation with this couple. They were much older than I, probably in their 50s at the time, or 40s, 50s, much older than I was at the time. And I don't know how it was we got to talking or got on the subject of Joe Scarborough, but we did, and it turned out that this guy knew Joe Scarborough because his son, if I remember correctly, their sons were in Boy Scouts together or Cub Scouts together or something. So they knew one another through that. And I remember this guy telling me that Joe Scarborough was a total phony. That he's like, I know what people, he said, but I'm telling you, I know this guy. He's full of crap. He is not what he pretends to be. That is not, what you see on TV is not the true guy at all. He's a wacko. He's crazy. And he was just really ripping on him like he had done something to the guy. And now, of course, this guy, he just said this was based off his experience being around him, particularly at, again, I think it was Cub Scout or Boy Scout events with their kids. And I've always remembered that because it was sort of this mental shock to me as a young person and this is one of the things when you first start getting involved in politics and, you're on, this side over here. And then those spokespeople you see to some degree as infallible. You really look up to them. You admire them. And you don't even necessarily as a young person see them as these human beings that are flawed. You see them as you might a teacher when you're young or, somebody that is of authority. And so it just put that stamp on my head that, all these years I remember this guy saying that about a guy that I thought, well, that just doesn't sound right at all. This is somebody that, he's on television a lot and he's really respected. And this guy's telling me that that's not who this guy is. He's not really conservative. And then over time, you watch this evolution, and I think about that guy, and I wonder where that guy is today, and does that guy still know Joe Scarborough? I doubt that he does, but because it wasn't like they were close friends at the time anyhow. But you see the way that he embarrasses himself. I'm sure he's not embarrassed at all, but that display, and I just, it's the things in life that you remember. And then you think of things that probably are very important that you don't remember. And that's just one of those things that I have always remembered. And it just seems so relevant that guy was telling, here some teenager about this guy named Joe Scarborough and what a piece of work and false guy and how he pretends to be this conservative, but he's really not. That he was just, that was the district he was in, and he had to play the part, and he was getting on TV a lot. And then people think Joe Scarborough has changed. But when I think back to what this guy who said he knew him was telling me, it is perhaps not the fact that he changed. It's just he now, over time, has slowly begun to show his true colors. And it's an embarrassment for intellectualism. It should be an embarrassment for the media, and it certainly is an embarrassment for the country. Some of your Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line messages. If Joe Biden comes off brilliantly tonight, I want some of the stuff they're pumping him with. Yeah. Another regarding Joe Scarborough claiming on MSNBC that not only is, and he said, I undersold Biden when I said he was cogent, that this is the absolute best, most brilliant, most analytical Joe Biden that has ever existed. He wasn't being sarcastic. The comment regarding that, Joe Scarborough apparently thought the SNL skit didn't go far enough. And Hank saying that Mike Johnson, Speaker, should tear up Biden's speech when he's done. It would be interesting to see what the media would do. Of course, Nancy Pelosi tearing up the speech after Donald Trump made it was one of the State of the Union addresses, and she tore it up, showing how mature. And it's that civility that Democrats are always talking about. Now, if, of course, Mike Johnson did that, it would be horrific. They would talk about how that was a federal crime because it was the destruction of property that is protected under Federal Document Act or some sort of federal document protection. And then they would talk about what hypocrites Republicans are because they were mad when Nancy Pelosi did it. So that of course, is what you would get for that. The bar is so low, as many of us know. The White House is openly acknowledging through their responses to questions about the presidential debates that and I think we're seeing the signals here. They do not plan on him debating. They know he can't handle it, and they know that there's too much to lose and not enough to gain. Here's Peter Doocy asking Karine Jean-Pierre about debates.
And so just for clarity, it's possible that there will be no Joe Biden, Donald Trump debates.
Is that what you, is that what you're excited about? Is that what you want to see? Because you keep asking me, you've had to speak about Trump 5 different times in different ways. And I've said
President Biden do in a debate. I'm not asking a question about a specific debate. I'm just asking how would he do in a debate? I know it's been 4 years since he saw.
Saw just last year, back in January 2023, at the last State of the Union, take on Republicans during giving a major speech. He took them on as they were heckling him. He took them on and said he was going to fight for programs, essentially said he was fighting for programs that the American people needed. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. He stood there and fought for the American people. I mean, that was pretty impressive. Some of you all reported on that.
Now, think about this for a moment. Yeah, I'll give her this. That's all that she has to work with. And with what she has to work with, that wasn't a bad response. She is identifying as, in her terms, quite impressive, the fact that a year ago, Joe Biden gave prepared remarks that were all on a teleprompter. That's what she's saying. You all saw it a year. That was just amazing. I mean, everyone was so impressed by this a year ago. He stood up and read off a teleprompter. This is where the bar is. And this isn't a bar that is being referenced by opposition to Joe Biden in order to mock him or illustrate how declined he is. This is the bar that the Biden White House is setting themselves. You have the White House spokesperson claiming that for Joe Biden, it is an impressive accomplishment that a year ago he read a speech off a teleprompter. Wow. I'm sure that not only must Republicans acknowledge what an amazing feat that is for a president of the United States, but the rest of the world must have seen that and I'm sure recall that moment that if they ever doubt what they see with Joe Biden, if they ever have concerns about whether or not the United States has a steady president that has coherence, all they must do is remember that a year ago, he read off a teleprompter. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care is a brand new facility. Fort and Sunshine. It's I guess an expansion, you could say, on their current facility. If you drive by it, you're certainly going to see it. It's impressive, not only on the outside but the inside. And here's why this is significant: because, as you know, vehicles, all the technological advances, and particularly when you're talking about not just cameras but the warnings when you are getting too close to something, or the auto parking. You've got these different aspects of a vehicle, these different functions of a vehicle that are very reliant on proper calibration. And most places may not even be aware of the necessary calibration. There was a story that Ryan or Dustin had told about someone who's, I think it was the auto park feature or something, and it was just screwed up. It was screwing up, and they didn't know why. And there had been a windshield replacement. Well, that windshield replacement required a recalibration that whomever did the windshield replacement wasn't aware of. That, not only the knowledge, but the new A1 Custom Car Care facility has the technological equipment in order to take care of that stuff, even for the most modern vehicles. So, of course, all your vehicles, but particularly if you have one of the newer vehicles with those sorts of features, you definitely want to utilize the services of A1 Custom Car Care. I played audio earlier in which Karine Jean-Pierre was asked whether or not Joe Biden was going to debate Donald Trump. That was the premise of the question. And, of course, she was evasive, acting like, oh, you'd like to see it? You keep asking about it. Donald Trump, there are articles now, news coverage, that Donald Trump is challenging Biden to debates, saying anytime, anywhere. I love how all of a sudden we're acting as if debates are some new concept, as opposed to that's what has always happened since we've all been alive. It is expected. They're acting as if this is some new concept. Donald Trump, here he's asking for a debate, and Peter Doocy's asking for one. Oh, you'd like to see that, wouldn't you? When was it that we shifted from debates being a standard part of the process for the American people to now acting like it's just some new little thing Donald Trump's asking about? Tomorrow morning, broadcasting live from Scrambler, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. It is also a first responders breakfast if you are a first responder. We invite you to join us for free breakfast, that provided by Scramblers, Barker's Frame and Collision, Pyramid Roofing Company. And it's as easy as stopping by while we do the show. That is 6A to 9A tomorrow from Scramblers. Get yourself some delicious breakfast. They're also open for lunch. They've got club sandwiches and burgers and all sorts of lunch options for you as well. And that's even during breakfast. I'm one of these people that, I like lunch and dinner for breakfast. Just as much as a lot of people really like the idea of breakfast for dinner, which I'm not opposed to. And some of it's because I get up so early. But, come breakfast time, I like a big hamburger. I like something along those lines. And so, even if it's not lunchtime at Scramblers, you can still go ahead and get yourself a lunch. But for the purposes of tomorrow's first responders breakfast, those of you that are first responders get free breakfast. If you hear whining in the background, it's Miss Butters, the dog. She has to go get some updated vaccines today. She's still in that pre-6-month era age of having to get these different vaccines. When it comes to people like me, and I'm like, vaccines, a dog, like pump her full. What do I care? She's a dog. It's just different that way. Like, okay, whatever she needs, you just tell me. So, anyhow, she's, you may hear her whining a bit. I think she's whining because I gave her that treat.
Yeah,
she does
is.
that. It's really weird.
If you want to see her, she's on our live right now.
Oh, yeah, there she is. Yep, for whatever. Last time we had her in here as well, I brought her some treats to try to keep her from whining, and then give it to her, and she walks around with it whining. Like, I don't know why. I don't know what the deal is with her psychologically. We thought maybe she was trying to find a place to hide it or something. But there's plenty of places to hide it.
My side, and she was I have like a little rug that covers up a bunch of wires, and she was like trying to dig under there, and I'm like, nope, you're gonna take us off air, girl.
Maybe that over here she could hide it under. I don't know, what a weirdo.
You be nice to her.
Okay. Miss Butters, everyone. The live feed, if you want to see Miss Butters or us any day that we're doing the show in studio, that is thanks to our friends at Springfield Wraps. They wrapped the studio, as you can see that in the camera. We are on YouTube Live at Springfield's Talk 1041. Isn't that the search, if I remember correctly? But you can also link to it from our Facebook page as well. Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is great audio. There was a reporter from the news agents. I don't know about this outlet. The reporter sounds as if she's from Europe, England, perhaps. And she's asking Marjorie Taylor Greene about vice presidential picks, about Nikki Haley dropping out. And she starts out asking normal, legitimate questions. But then she starts to veer into the place that journalists can't help but go, and that is trashing on Trump and Trump supporters. And there's a dirty word in here. I have silenced it out, but you'll get the point. And we'll also post the video. The video is just as wonderful just because of the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a congresswoman, for those of you that are not aware, the way that she just, I don't know, tells this reporter the what for. And here's some of that exchange.
I can tell you why so many people that support Donald Trump love conspiracy theories, including yourself. He seems to attract lots of conspiracy theorists.
Let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So,
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you fuck off? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you.
How about that?
How about that? How about them apples? No, I was playing this when I first saw. I think the Daily Caller posted it. I'm sure other sites did as well. And so Tom, who is our operations manager, I was laughing, and he walked by the office, and I said, check this out. And so he was laughing, and he goes, what's the deal with the Jewish space lasers? And some of you may not know that. Now, this is the conspiracy theory, if you will, that actually comes from the media, that, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about. And it is appalling to be presented by somebody in the media as a conspiracy theorist when the media carried the conspiracy for years that Donald Trump conspired with Putin in order to rig the elections. The lack of self-awareness, the lack of accountability of this media, it's almost appalling for any media that carried the Russian collusion conspiracy theory, which of course turned out to be proven false, to talk down about Trump supporters or anyone in the context of those people being just conspiracy theorists. It's like, are you kidding? I wish that every Republican just had in their back pocket, just sort of like Joe Biden keeps note cards, keeping a mental note card anytime any journalist starts trying to throw around that conspiracy theory thing, just bring up Russian. Oh, you mean like Russian collusion? Oh, you mean like the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? You can go down an entire list. In fact, the vast majority of coverage that the media had during the Trump years was all conspiracy theories, and they all turned out to be not true. Look at the weather here in a moment, or listen to it. Right now, the news. The first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Thunderstorms through the day today with a high near 60. More of that tonight with a low of 53. A 90% chance of showers and storms, 62 tomorrow. Saturday, mostly sunny, a high near 50. It is daylight savings jump forward coming up Sunday, 2 a.m. Just a reminder on that. Also, we do have Author of the Week coming up, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. That an hour from now. Peter Schweitzer, his latest book regarding China and the reason that they are able to continue to be responsible for deaths in America. Blood Money is the title of the book. And it has become #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, so we will talk with him coming up just an hour from now. Again, that Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Quite a bit of the listening area is experiencing showers and thunderstorms this morning. And as you were getting in the car, heading off to work, if you notice that your gutters are struggling to keep up with the rain, or maybe more serious issues popped up like staining on your ceiling, or maybe some full-blown leaks or drips, don't go at it alone. I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. I love to recommend them just because of the experience that I had with them, because they made the whole roofing process just as simple and stress-free as they possibly could. Now, whenever I called the Pyramid team, they came out, they did a free roof inspection for me, then they walked through the insurance process, and we then went through the design phase. And one thing that I really wanted was a tin roof on my back porch and my sunroom area, and they were able to just make that happen, and it looks great, and it is honestly the best part of my house. I love to go back there whenever it rains. I kind of wish I was there right now, actually. So if you do notice any issues over the next couple of days, go ahead and give Josh a call. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Last segment, we played audio of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she was asked by a journalist named Emily Matalis from the News Agents why it is that so many conspiracy theorists seem to gravitate towards Donald Trump, including you, Congresswoman. And Marjorie Taylor Greene responded with, well, you guys are the ones that spread the conspiracy theories. And the reporter began, well, will you tell us about Jewish space lasers then? To which Marjorie Taylor Greene told her to F off, which was pretty classic. But I was asked about the Jewish space lasers. And have you ever heard Marjorie Taylor Greene,
No.
where they mock her for this? So this is an area that the media loves to utilize that terminology, Jewish space lasers, claiming that Marjorie Taylor Greene is not only a nut, but anti-Semitic, and she has accused Israel of using lasers, or accused the Jews of using lasers to start fires. Now, it really is a very contorted effort by the media in order to portray Marjorie Taylor Greene in this manner. And if you notice, they throw that out there, if you ever hear this, or people on the left, but they never actually explain what they mean. And that's because there's no truth to it. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, when there was one of the, I think this was a couple years ago, out in California, there were some wildfires. And as you know, oftentimes the government, whether it's regulation, and we saw this in Hawaii because of government regulations, and ironically environmental regulations, these fires get out of control. And Marjorie Taylor Greene had posted information about some of the details of this. I don't recall the specifics on, but it's not relevant to the overall point. But there was some sort, I think there were tax incentives by California that for environmental purposes that went to these space-based solar satellites, okay? And as always, with this sort of technology, you have these big corporations that get tax incentives. I mean, we know this. Electric vehicle companies get tax incentives. Solar panel companies get tax incentives, or you get tax incentives. And so when it comes to the so-called green energy, this is something that is very commonplace, particularly for the left. And she was referencing when this fire occurred, there was people online talking about trying to figure out what started it, because California, we don't really know what started the fires. And so somewhere, and I don't know whether this was legit or not, but she was noting that people were talking about that potentially these space-based solar power units could have been responsible for starting the fires. And she was noting that these are these massive corporations that get tax incentives. And so it would be the sort of thing, if it did occur, of course, the government of California is not going to want that information to come out because it's an environmental thing, right? And she listed there were a number of different companies that she listed that were investors in or had some sort of hand in this technology and was benefiting from the state of California's deal. And of the number of different companies, one of them is the Rothschild Inc. or whatever, which some people claim is, run by Jews. Now, she wasn't saying, she was just listing the companies. So, based off of that, the media twisted it to say that Marjorie Taylor Greene claimed that Jews were using lasers to start fires. Now, in terms of the technology itself, because this is the left loves this stuff because the left is ignorant. And let me give you a very simple version of it. You may recall when, I think it was it was a debate between Trump and Biden, and Trump was talking about coyotes that were bringing humans across the border. That's the term for human smugglers. Well, as usual, when it comes to issues like illegal immigration, the left has no idea about the issue itself. And he was mocked relentlessly because people on the left were like, that idiot, he thinks coyotes. They thought he was talking about like actual coyotes because they know so little of the issue. And when it comes to Marjorie Taylor Greene claiming that Jewish space lasers start fires in California, it is also based off the left having no clue what they're talking about. So I went to energy.gov. This is government's website, the Department of Energy. And they have an entire section, space-based solar power. How does it work? Self-assembling satellites are launched into space, along with reflectors and a microwave or laser-powered transmitter. Reflectors or inflatable mirrors spread over a vast swath of space, directing solar radiation onto solar panels. These panels convert solar power into either a microwave or a laser and beam uninterrupted power down to Earth. On Earth, power receiving stations collect the beam and add it to the electric grid. Now, of course, it goes into greater detail, has an entire section on laser transmitting satellites, in which the Department of Energy site lists laser transmitting satellites as described by our friends at LLNL orbit in Earth orbit, or orbit in low Earth orbit at about 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface, weighing in at less than 10 metric tons. This satellite is a fraction of the weight of its microwave components. And anyway, it goes into the technical aspects of it. And what it's, describing here, and I frankly didn't even know that this was a thing until the media began claiming Marjorie Taylor Greene was an idiot for thinking that there were satellites in space that beamed with lasers power down to Earth. Well, that is occurring. It's on the Department of Energy's website explaining that. But they mock her for talking about, lasers coming from satellites. Now, whether or not something like that could be responsible for a fire, I have no idea. I don't know. I don't think it's a dumb question to ask when you're talking about technology and lasers and so forth, whether or not that's the sort of thing that could, if something went wrong, what are the unintended side effects? Can there be explosions? Can there, to me, those are common sense questions for a person who's not an expert. And I don't know the answer to those things. So what they've taken here is the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene, while listing companies that benefited from the relationship with government, financially speaking, in these endeavors. And one of those companies is a company that some people, not Marjorie Taylor Greene, but some people say, oh, yeah, that's a Jewish company. They took that, along with people's lack of knowledge that we do have solar-based or space-based solar power that does use lasers in order to transmit that uninterrupted power back down here to Earth, in order to make people think Marjorie Taylor Greene is some sort of nut job. And, of course, all of this is in the context of trying to make her look like the nut. Trying to make her appear as if she doesn't know what she's talking about, when the entire premise of their disinformation is reliant on their audience being the ones who have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. First Responders Breakfast tomorrow at Scramblers. If you are first responder, medical, EMT, police, fire, come by. It's an invitation. We want to have you out there. You get free breakfast. Barker Frame Collision, Pyramid Roofing Company, and Scramblers making that possible. We'll have a look at the weather coming up. We do also have posted, KSGF.com, the latest pup up for adoption with Nick and Cole's Fido Friends, along with and sponsored by Nicole Brock's American Family Insurance, the Humane Society of Southwest Missouri. Chase, was that the dog's name? Or Chance. I kept saying Chase. Chance is such a sweet boy. About a year old, is that what they said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go watch the video, and you can get a description. I was thinking about, and see Chance as well. I was, after we did the video, thinking Chance, I think, would be the perfect dog for a lady who lives alone.
Yeah.
I just really thought that, and perhaps if you go watch the video, you'll see why. But just an absolute sweetheart, and you get this sense of be very, very protective, particularly of a gal. So maybe if you are, you live alone, you're a woman, and you're looking for some sort of pet, Chance could be the perfect one for you. If he hasn't been adopted yet, you can go see that video of Chance that Nicole Brock and I introduced. And we do this every Wednesday. You go to KSGF.com. Along the right-hand side, if you scroll down, you'll see the video there. Also, while you're at KSGF.com, you can register to win tickets to see Shrek the Musical. Traffic update now. I'm Nick Reed. All of your home loan needs. What about refinancing? Why would I refinance? I got a 3.25% interest rate. I'm never letting that puppy go. More than double it. You could come out ahead. I know it seems counterintuitive, particularly if you have other loans. Anthony Carricker a couple weeks ago shared with us a specific story about someone who had come in, and that was the scenario they were in. It was 3 and something, lower threes, and it went up to just under 8, but still able to shorten the life of the loan and come out ahead financially because of some other debt that was there. That may not be the way it works for you. It doesn't cost anything to find out, and it's not a lot of effort on your part whatsoever. Just get their contact info. You can get that process started and find out. You may be surprised, but you know what? If not, and you learn that, really for you, there's no need to worry about refinancing right now. It's not anything that's really going to give you any ultimate benefit. Then you'll know. iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. The First Alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Thunderstorms throughout the day today, a high near 60. More showers and thunderstorms tonight, low of 53. 90% chance of showers and storms tomorrow, 62, and then mostly sunny with a high only of 50 on Saturday. A Jewish group has awarded Donald Trump menorah for Israel support and fighting anti-Semitism. I mean, you just can't get any more perfect. You juxtapose this to the fact that the administration currently in power in the United States continues to lobby for Hamas. What Hamas wants, the White House lobbies for. Hamas wants a ceasefire. The White House is right there to be their mouthpiece. This is the organization that carried out a terrorist attack on Israel, their 9/11, making it as horrific as humanly possible, carrying out deliberately a sort of horde attack that the world, well, that's synonymous with Attila the Hun, whose sole purpose was to scare the living daylights out of people into submission. Hamas wants aid to come in so that they can replenish their terrorist attackers. The White House is right there to demand Israel allow it. The administration can perform all the lip service it wants about, well, we stand with Israel. But when you don't, you don't. Breitbart writing that as President Joe Biden and fellow Democrats continue to pressure the Jewish state to forfeit a victory in its current war on Hamas, a Jewish delegation led by the Israeli Heritage Foundation expressed gratitude to former President Donald Trump at his Mar-a-Lago estate, presenting him with a decorative menorah for his steadfast support of Israel and efforts to combat anti-Semitism. In a meeting that underscored the deep ties between Israel and its supporters in the United States, a Jewish delegation led by the Israeli Heritage Foundation convened with Trump. The gathering marked the solidarity and appreciation for the unwavering support that the former president has shown towards the Jewish community in the state of Israel. The nonprofit organization, represented by Executive Director Rabbi David Katz, Executive Vice President Joseph Frager, Executive President Dr. Stephen Salloway, were joined by Chairman Commissioner of the Nassau County Bridge Authority Samuel Nehemias, philanthropist Louis Topper. Together, they expressed gratitude for Trump's contributions, including the historic U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem, which you may recall Democrats claimed he never would actually do. They expressed their gratitude for Trump's contribution in his recognition of the Golan Heights as Israeli territory and the initiative of the Abraham Accords, all of which played crucial roles in fostering peace and stability in the Middle East, which, of course, due to the Biden policies, have all completely gone into disarray. It's noted the historic Trump-brokered Abraham Accord peace agreements that were entered between Israel and multiple Arab allies, meanwhile under Biden's leadership, Israel's under attack. The Houthis are attacking us. U.S. service members are being killed on post. I think that we all know what would happen if it were 4 years past. And instead of the Abraham Accords moving forward, there was complete and utter disaster in the Middle East. And if Donald Trump were acting as a lobbyist for Hamas and Jewish organizations were giving Joe Biden awards for his steadfast leadership when it comes to fighting anti-Semitism, this would be lead story. It would be a theme. But instead, the media will still continue to paint Trump as somehow a problem when it comes to anti-Semitism. Coming up, Senator Tom Cotton. This is an amazing story. You may recall that Senator Cotton, Arkansas, had written an editorial that was printed in the New York Times, and the person at the New York Times who allowed it to be published lost his job. And the point of the editorial was arguing that in the midst of the country watching its cities be burned to the ground by Black Lives Matter activists and other anti-Semitic organizations, Antifa, of course, the killing of people by many of these mobs, the attempts on the lives of law enforcement, the targeted assassination of these mobs by these mobs, billions of dollars worth of damage being done, and you had some, including Senator Tom Cotton, saying this would kind of be a time when the National Guard needs to be called in because some of these cities, not only can the police not control it, but they are under attack. Upon the publication, the New York Times staff revolted. They claimed that Tom Cotton was going to cause black people to be murdered because he was trying to scare people into thinking that black people were dangerous by calling in the National Guard in order to try and protect law enforcement and people's businesses from these mobs. Well, it was recently announced that Democrat New York Governor Kathy Hochul is planning to use National Guard to crack down on just New York's everyday crime, particularly in the subways. This is how out of control, this is how poorly Democrats have managed New York City, that the governor has had to call in the National Guard. This isn't a Rodney King type of situation where there was an event that caused this massive and sudden spike in looting and attacks and murders. This isn't in response to the summer of love, as Tom Cotton was referencing, in which billions of dollars worth of damage was being done and you had law enforcement being targeted, people being murdered. This is just because of everyday New York under Democrat rule. Of course, what so many people are noting is when is the New York Times going to accuse Kathy Hochul of putting the lives of black people in danger? When is the staff of the New York Times going to revolt? Where are the editorials going to be? Where are all of these Democrats going to be that refer to the National Guard as stormtroopers, as they love to call them whenever Trump just offered them up to cities to protect their law enforcement and their citizens? Of course, there will be no calls for any sort of resignation. There will be no accusations of hyping things out of proportion in a way that's going to make the lives of the black community be put in danger. There will not be references to National Guard as stormtroops, because when Democrats do it, it's good. But when Republicans do it, it's horrific, it's martial law, it's turning the military against the citizens. This once again illustrates that there is not a single issue that the media and the Democrat Party take on as an issue of virtue that has any real true meaning to them other than for the purpose of power, using it as a weapon. And National Guard being called in order to protect people from crime is yet another example. Here's where the Democrats need it. They've got to, try as best as possible to start making people feel as if they're not in danger from crime as we get into, and we're in the midst of an election season. So, it makes sense. Yes, call the National Guard in. Because it benefits them, or so they think it will. But when they can utilize the calls for the National Guard to protect the people as a weapon against Republicans, against Donald Trump, well, then they do that. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs. One of my favorite stories, and I've read it to you in the past, the reviews, is from some folks that were moving to Springfield from out of state, and someone from here told them, hey, you need Emily Johnson, because they needed to buy a home. And they were just elated with the experience they had. The way that Emily Johnson kept in touch with them, took care, did a lot of the heavy lifting, made it a stress-free process, did walkthroughs through, FaceTimes when necessary, and took what can be a stressful process, even if you're actually right there, and made it incredibly easy and helped these people who already had the stresses of moving a family out of state into a brand new area, find a home that made it so welcoming. That's the sort of service that you get with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF. Let's go to Walter. Welcome to the show, Walter.
Good morning. Kathy Hochul was also wanting to victimize, criminals by anyone that assaults somebody on transportation, the subways, buses, things like that, will be banned for 3 years. And she's wondering how all this stuff happened. Well, if she wants to confront the person that caused all of this, her and Alan Bragg need to stand in front of a mirror and have a conversation with themselves, because they did all this. This is all liberal Democratic policies where you don't want to confront a cancer. And that's what crime is, cancer that eats cities alive unless you take action against it. Kathy Hochul is 100% responsible for all these things. The gentleman, unfortunately, there was a conductor on one of the trains. Did you see him that got his throat slashed from ear to ear? And a doctor stepped in to help save him. Thank God there was someone there that could help him. But he should sue the governor, and he should sue Alan Bragg. And I would take them to civil court, and I would own everything they've ever seen in their life, because they have caused all of this with their policies of coddling psychopaths and criminals and not protecting the innocent. We have a criminal justice system because the criminals get the justice. We don't have a victim's justice system, and that has to change. Stand up and vote these pieces of trash out, including the ones here in Springfield that support things you know are wrong. Get rid of Lincoln Huff for the love of God Almighty. Thank you.
Oh, well, he's making a run at, was it Lieutenant Governor?
Lieutenant
Isn't it?
Governor.
Yeah, Lieutenant Governor. And I got to tell you, I fear that he'll win. I fear that he'll win because he has the establishment behind him. I fear that if, there's enough, I don't know, frankly, I don't even know how many candidates there are, but as long as there's more than two, that's going to benefit him. And then being a Trump year in Missouri, the Republican, whomever it is going to win. And I fear that we're kind of veering a little off here to some degree, but when we're talking about the problems of the establishment, I mean, we've got people running for higher right now, running for governor. Well, a true conservative. I talked about this yesterday. I mean, presided over and helped expand government and raise taxes. Lincoln Huff's the same. He's looking, to be. I mean, this is a guy that has helped block the protection of girls in sports. He has co-sponsored legislation to shift to a national vote away from the Electoral College, which would render Missouri irrelevant other than Kansas City and St. Louis. So that essentially are the segments of Missouri that would help choose whom the president is. How does that make you feel? It's just sometimes you see glimmers of hope because there are those people who run as Republicans and they really genuinely do what they can in order to stick to the platform and be smaller government, lower taxes. But then you see some of these top offices and some of these individuals that are running, and it's just from bad to worse. Lincoln Huff being one of them. Fortunately, in the gubernatorial race, there are, I believe, a couple of good options. I think there's really only one not good option. If we're talking about tax and spend and so forth, but he's also the current lieutenant governor, and so he's got the establishment behind him, and so that is going to help benefit him. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to get too far off the beaten path. Walter, thank you for the call. I do want to make a point, though, back to the original story here, and that is the recognition by some, Senator Tom Cotton. There's a bit of a, see, I told you so. Big to-do when he wrote an op-ed piece that was published in the New York Times in which the staff revolted, and the New York Times apologized. We're so sorry we allowed a U.S. senator to write an op-ed piece that was arguing that some of these cities need to be protected by National Guard when they were under threat, when you had their local law enforcement being attacked, you had the citizens losing their livelihoods, all because of the left-wing protests that were taking place during the so-called Summer of Love. And Cotton was accused of he was going to make life more dangerous for black people. And, it's the most horrific thing ever. Well, here, Kathy Hochul of New York, in order just to combat the standard Democrat crime in New York, was going to call in the National Guard. It isn't going to work. And here's why. This is all for show. And what happens with elected officials oftentimes is because they oftentimes react based off of theater, but the rest of the world doesn't. So much of what they do is symbolism, but they treat symbolism as if it is reality, but the rest of the world doesn't. So the whole idea of putting the National Guard out there is to make people feel safer. But the criminal knows that as well. All that matters to the criminal is, how is this going to affect me as a criminal? And let's walk that through. What is a National Guard person supposed to do? And I really genuinely want, I'm surely they're all right if you are monitoring the subway and you see somebody grab a purse off of someone and take off running. Are they supposed to chase them? If they get into a physical altercation, are they allowed to use deadly force? Can you imagine if a Democrat had a policy in which somebody in the U.S. military shot and killed a civilian in their official capacity as a member of the military? I suspect that they're told just to be there, much like they scrapped the idea. They announced with much fanfare these law enforcement robots that were going to monitor the subway system. And it was just that, the presence of it was going to stop criminals. And it did nothing of the sort. In fact, they scrapped the program, I think, in less than a year because it was doing nothing whatsoever. I suspect, in fact, probably those stupid robots were taking on damage because people jacking with them. I'm sure that this National Guard stunt, as opposed to when Tom Cotton and Donald Trump were offering them up and calling for them, in which they would have done something actual meaningful, that is just for show. But guess what? Everyone will know that if it is. And the criminal will know that. And so it's not going to make any difference. Worse yet, you could potentially have a scenario in which some of these criminals want to prove a point and think, okay, we'll show them. And then you are going to have some sort of physical confrontation and conflict with the military. And God help whatever member of the U.S. military who signed up to serve the country that finds themselves on the receiving end of that, because we know which side the left will take. We know what the Democrats who put them in that impossible position will do to them should they end up in a scenario where they have to use deadly force to save their lives. We've seen it with law enforcement. It certainly isn't going to be any different with people in the military. Let's get a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. Blood money. Why it is Chinese that continue to be able to kill countless Americans. Be responsible for the deaths. Peter Schweitzer, #1 New York Times bestseller. We will talk with him coming up in the next hour. The author of the week is always sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, so that to come. If you miss it, you'll definitely want to catch it in the podcast or Spotify, KSGF.com. And then tomorrow, live from Scramblers, Extra Mile Home Inspection Real Estate Repair Morning Road Show. Also, a First Responders Breakfast. First Responders come out, free breakfast for you from Pyramid Roofing Company, Scramblers, and Barker's Frame and Collision. Welcoming Wilder RV to the KSGF family. We've been working on this for some time. Perfect pairing. And an area that we were not servicing you, those that maybe already, your longtime lifers, you got the fifth wheel, you got, you know, whether you travel, you just take it to Table Rock or Truman Lake, or maybe you keep it in your driveway, and then whenever you have a fight with your wife, that's where you go live. Whatever your reason may be, but you're old time at it, you're an expert at it, then you're going to find a home with Wilder RV if you've never done it before in your life. And if you're like me, I'm someone who I don't like to not know what's going on. So I'm always trying to find out information. I also don't like to appear as if I don't know what's going on. I don't like that. And that can be a real roadblock if you are very interested in a new hobby, in a new lifestyle, like maybe camping with an RV, but you don't know what you don't know, and you're like, I'm going to look like an idiot. One of the things I love about how they function up there is whether this is your 80th or your very first one you've ever purchased and you've never even been in one before. After your purchase, they go through everything with you. All of the hookups, how to do this, how to do that. So you are not going to leave without knowing how it is that you utilize properly your new purchase. That's not something you get at most places, but you do get it at Wilder RV, and that's why it is so worth the drive up to Clinton, Missouri, straight shot north of Springfield for your next purchase. Wilder RV, wilderrv.com, also ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Coming up, great author of the week, Peter Schweitzer. I won't pretend as if there's not a good chance you've heard him talk about Blood Money, his new #1 New York Times bestseller, because I'm sure that he's probably been on every single one of the shows that we carry throughout the day here on KSGF. If you haven't, though, even if you have, hopefully we'll get into some areas that maybe he hasn't talked about with some of the other hosts. But if you haven't, then this is going to be a great one, and it really explains a lot, and it is, on one hand, enlightening, which information is always good to have, but it can also be disheartening because you throw up your hands and you think, man, we just cannot overcome this stuff. So you could take it for what you will, but I do think that you'll enjoy that coming up here after we get the news, the weather's, traffic. And, of course, our author of the week is always sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Now the latest news update. The First Alert forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals, from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Thunderstorms throughout the day, a high near 60 today. Tonight, showers, thunderstorms, 53 for a low. A 90% chance of showers and storms tomorrow. High near 62, mostly sunny Saturday with a high near 50. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Avis, the car rental company, whether you need a vehicle for a day or even a year, Avis, they have got you covered. For those weekend road trips, Avis has their short-term rental program, but they also realized that there was a bigger need for extended rentals, and so that is why they took the time and created their long-term rental program. Now, the long-term rental program, this is a great option if you are looking to purchase a vehicle, but maybe you've got like one or two options that you want to try out before you actually go ahead and make that commitment. It's also great for people who like to lease their vehicles, but you're looking for more flexibility, or maybe you're a business owner and you're looking to add to your fleet of vehicles. Now, the best part about the long-term rental program is you don't have to worry about vehicle maintenance. You don't have to take any trips to the DMV. You don't have to worry about taxes. And the best part is you can swap out vehicles every couple of months if you wish to do so. Now, if you are needing a short-term rental, or maybe you want more information on that long-term rental program, program, just stop by the Avis store. It's located here in Springfield off of Fort and Sunshine. And of course, you can find all of the contact information for Avis Springfield under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Springfield Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. It's Thursday, which means it's Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. And I'm sure you've heard him on half a dozen of the shows that we carry here, as well as a number of television news programs. Peter Schweitzer, the book Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. And, well, you've had a few of these, and they always have these revelations that one would like to think journalists are out there reporting on. However, they seem to either dismiss or portray all of these as some sort of conspiracy theories. But your books always just draw from point A to point B. This is no different. And I think back to the debate between Trump and Biden, in which Biden created this wall that there was absolutely no money from China or these other countries going to anyone in the family. Those goalposts have moved so many times at this point. I don't even know where they stand now. Let's start with China, and this appears to be one of the countries in which so much of the money has flowed, and of course Biden continues to, sometimes in conflict with statements of his supporters, to claim that his son, they never talked with his son in business. How intertwined is all of this? How connected is, and how compromised is Joe Biden when it comes to China, for example?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're quite right. They've moved the goalposts repeatedly. And so it really, begs the question, why is there any credibility when they issue a statement now that's not backed up with any concrete evidence? And the evidence is very clear based on the business partners. You have three former business partners that who have all testified that Joe Biden was effectively the product for sale because Hunter Biden and James Biden, the president's brother, really had nothing to offer. They had nothing to sell, no service to give. So it's pretty clear how this model worked. They were giving foreign nationals, especially from unfriendly countries like Russia and China and countries like Ukraine, was giving them access to a very powerful leader, the Vice President of the United States, now the President of the United States. And the deal with China is, I think, particularly troubling because it spills over into so many sensitive issues today. As I lay out in the Blood Money book just coming out, you have this very troubling situation where we're faced with the problem of fentanyl poisonings in this country. It's the leading cause of death for people under the age of 45. Vast majority of people taking fentanyl don't even know they're taking fentanyl. That's why I call it a poisoning. And the problem is that a Chinese gang called UBG, which is headed up by a guy named Zhang Anlo, who goes by the name White Wolf, they really set up the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico in the fentanyl trade and made them the kings of fentanyl. And the problem is that White Wolf had a business partner who was one of those individuals that sent $5 million to the Biden family. So you have one degree of separation between these criminal entities that are poisoning Americans and the Biden family. It's little wonder that Joe Biden doesn't want to have a conversation about China's involvement in the fentanyl trade and all the ancillary issues that go with it. So, politicians don't like embarrassment. They don't like accountability. And when there's a money flow that's embarrassing, they tend to shy away from the subject. And that's what Joe Biden is doing, I think, on this very sensitive and important issue.
I think back to after September 11th and one of the evaluations that our government and I think our society came to is that, we were caught off guard because it was a different type of war, that we didn't know that they were at war with us, and we vowed to, be more aware of these non-traditional forms of invasion, if you will. And in my mind, it seems to me as if it has been a long, deliberate, multi-pronged invasion, whether it's the fentanyl, guns, EVs, having celebrities as spokespersons, essentially, for China. Am I reading too much into it, or have we been under some form of attack by the communist Chinese for some time?
No, I think you're quite right. And in fact, I would say don't take my word for it, take their word for it. They operate under a strategy called disintegration warfare. That's a phrase they came up with. It was the title really of a famous book in China published in 2010. And what disintegration warfare says is that, the best strategist is the one that defeats their enemy without actually firing a shot. And that's really been China's strategy now for quite some time. It's predicated on the old philosophies of Sun Tzu, who's an ancient Chinese strategist, but it's very much alive today, and it includes lots of different things, but the main purpose is to sow discord, chaos in the United States, and to sap us of our energy. And I actually quote in the book from a Chinese military officer saying that the divisions in the United States that they are helping to fan are accomplishing that goal. So, this is an enormous problem. And the other part of that is the fact that a lot of people in our leadership class don't want to talk about this subject. It may be that they have personal financial ties that are a problem. It also can be that a lot of people in Washington kind of go along to get along. And if you look at it through the prism of this reality, that China is literally killing millions of Americans, you can't have a normal relationship with China. And that means as a leader, now you've got to make really difficult, hard choices. And unfortunately, it's human nature that a lot of people want to avoid hard choices. So, my view of this is that, America's on fire with fentanyl, with violence, with some of the other problems we're facing. China's holding an empty can of gasoline. They provided accelerants. And our leaders see this and know this, but they're silent. And that's a scary picture, but I think an accurate one.
We are talking with our author of the week, Peter Schweitzer, the book Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. There's been this long push masquerading to some degree as environmentalism for electric vehicles. And as things come more and more into focus, we find that it appears as if China benefits greatly from this. We've been told that one of the reasons we're supposed to go to EVs is so that we are no longer dependent on foreign countries for our energy, yet apparently it makes us even more dependent. Potentially when it comes to so much of the mining. They are also, by way of Mexico, it appears going to evade tariffs that have been put into place that, of course, aren't favorable to China. How much of the relationship when it comes to the EVs and China benefiting from that are because of what they, quote, have on some of these politicians versus the environmentalism component? Is it equally married? What's that makeup look like?
Well, I think you're quite right. I mean, the argument is we need to get off of fossil fuels because it makes us dependent upon unstable foreign countries like Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. The problem is that the push to renewables has made us dependent upon another foreign country, China, which has announced that it is our chief rival on the global stage. So that just does not make any sense. And China has worked very aggressively to corner the market on EVs, on solar panels, on wind turbines. So the closer we moved in that direction, the more dependent we are going to become on China unless we, make some serious changes in terms of our energy policy. And what you've seen out of the Biden administration is nothing of the sort. Chinese companies are going to benefit enormously from the green energy push that's being made. I think, obviously there are multiple motives here, but I think when you look at Joe Biden, the fact that his family has received some $30 million from Chinese businessmen over the course of his tenure as vice president of the United States and shortly thereafter, you see a picture of a family that's benefited enormously from China and that China has leverage on them. And what they expect from people they have leverage on is big help with a little bad mouth. That's a phrase that they actually use. And what it means is they don't mind if Joe Biden says something about Taiwan or maybe says an occasional thing about human rights. What they want is these individuals to deliver on the things that are most important to them. And what's most important to China is in this technology and economic race that we don't interfere, that we don't preclude or prevent Chinese companies from their expansive growth in this area. And what they want from our leaders is basically silence on the really important issues. Talk about Taiwan, that's fine, but we don't want you to talk about China's involvement in fentanyl, the fact that China since 2018 has been smuggling devices to convert handguns to machine guns to criminal gangs in the United States. We don't want you to talk about, the true purposes of TikTok. All of these issues that I highlight in the book and that the Biden administration has been woefully not engaged on. That's the larger mosaic that I see. You could apply that same reasoning to, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader. This is not a partisan issue. These financial entanglements work both ways, and it's an enormous problem that we need to address.
If you would, talk a bit about Mitch McConnell's connections to China, and then also just an overview of how big of a problem is this? How bipartisan? Is it 50-50, 90-10? And how many people in positions of power in the U.S. do you think are infected with this conflict, to put it mildly?
Well, I think in the case of Mitch McConnell, it's pretty direct. His family, he married into the Chao family. His wife is Elaine Chao. She was in the cabinet in the Trump administration and also the George W. Bush administration. Her family owns a shipping business called Foremost Shipping. And back in 1993, then Senator Mitch McConnell and his wife Elaine Chao and Elaine Chao's father visited China as guests of the Chinese State Shipbuilding Corporation. And as the name implies, this is a government entity. It's the biggest military contractor in China. And they basically struck a bargain with the family. They said, look, we'll build these large container ships for you. We'll finance the construction of those ships. We'll provide you crews to man the ships, and we'll give you contracts so you can make money in your shipping business. And the Chows thought that was a great idea. So their business expanded rapidly, very successful. The problem is, of course, that they are now highly dependent upon the good graces of Beijing. And were Mitch McConnell, as the Senate Republican leader, to say or do things that really anger China, they could destroy the family business overnight. That's the kind of leverage they like. It's like the leverage they have with Joe Biden. So it is a bipartisan issue. It is a bipartisan problem. I think that, it's hard to say in percentage terms who it affects more. I will say that you do have elements within the Democratic Party where there's an ideological affinity for China. You see this with members of the Squad, people like AOC, who really don't want to criticize China. They even voted against this bipartisan committee in Congress on competition with China. They even voted against it, so we don't have to have a committee looking into that. So I think it's probably a little bit more of a problem with Democrats because of the ideological affinity. But that said, you've got Republicans that are very close to the business community, Wall Street, et cetera. And Wall Street makes a lot of money on China and does not want to have those relationships disrupted. So you have to look at it as a case-by-case issue. But we need to address this because if we are, in fact, in a competition, or I would argue in a war with China, and our leaders are AWOL, we are going to lose this war. There's no question about it.
Peter Schweitzer with us, the book Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. Last question I have in regards Trump. I remember audio or transcript at some point prior to the Biden-Trump election in which somebody, I don't even remember if they were in government, but they were giving a speech at a university in Beijing perhaps and noting that, that they couldn't control Trump, but they could control Biden and they could control him through Wall Street. I thought of this because you mentioned Wall Street there. And I'm curious, how did they handle Trump? Trump, at least in a number of areas, unaffected by those traditional influences because he had his own set of wealth. He wasn't as reliant on people raising dollars and making donations to him. Did the approach that the Chinese had with Trump, was it different? Was it the same? Was it effective? What did that look like?
Yeah, it was a little bit different. You're quite right. His donor base is different traditionally than Democrats and Republicans have. He doesn't have a lot of big Wall Street donors or Silicon Valley donors. He has a lot of small dollar donors around the country. They certainly did try to work through Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, through Steve Mnuchin, who was his Treasury Secretary. You'll remember that when Trump imposed tariffs on China, the Chinese did not go to the White House. They instead went to Wall Street and Silicon Valley and said, you need to go lobby him and tell him to stop doing this. So there are just domestic constituents that are going to push this. And I also think that, look, I think Trump has probably learned he was promised by President Xi that Xi was going to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Trump, said this is great, this is wonderful, but nothing changed. Xi basically lied to Trump. So I think Trump has probably learned that lesson. He doesn't have the same pressures, but as with every leader, it's a question of who ends up around him. Were Donald Trump to win re-election, who's going to be his Secretary of State? Who's going to be his national security advisor? And do they have, strings that can be pulled by China in those areas? And we'll just have to wait and see if indeed he does win in November and who he does appoint to those positions.
Our author of the week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Again, thank you, Peter Schweitzer, for the book Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans, on Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Traffic update moments away. Reminder that tomorrow morning, broadcasting live from Scramblers, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair, it is also a first responders breakfast. If you're a first responder, please come out and join us as we buy you breakfast, that being Scramblers and Barker's Frame and Collision and Pyramid Roofing Company. All you got to do is come by as we broadcast live. That is 6A to 9A Scramblers tomorrow. Look at the weather coming up in just a moment. Now, for the last time this morning, a traffic update. Streaming live, KSGF.com. The First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Thunderstorms throughout the day. Today, a high near 60. More showers and storms tonight, 53 for a low. A 90% chance of showers and storms tomorrow, high near 62. And Saturday, mostly sunny with a high near 50. And don't forget, daylight savings time situation, 2 a.m. Sunday or thereabouts. Those clocks spring forward, so you do lose an hour. Just a reminder for you. A couple of items regarding the continued effort to protect those who are coming into this country illegally by the left. The governor of Arizona had vetoed a bill that would have allowed law enforcement to arrest individuals who are trespassing in this country illegally. Because, as usual, if you are an American citizen or in Arizona, an Arizonian, and you trespass, you get arrested. If you trespass into someone's home, you go to jail. But if you are from some other country and you're trespassing in this country illegally, you're protected. It's a pretty remarkable side-by-side comparison when you see people who get in this country, who break in, who illegally trespass into this country. They get a free place to stay, they get free food, they get free education, they get free health care, they get free gift cards, they get free attorneys. They are rewarded handsomely. But if you're an American citizen who doesn't support Joe Biden, and you illegally trespass in the U.S. Capitol, 10 years, 20 years maybe? This is the attack the American citizen is under. Senator Joni Ernst, Republican Iowa, attempted to force a floor vote yesterday on a law that would require illegal immigrants who commit violent crimes, not just random illegals who are looking for a better life, but those who, rape, murder, molest children, that the new law would require those illegal immigrants who commit the violent crimes be detained by Immigration and Custom Enforcement, all in the hopes of preventing future rapes and murders and child molestations. The Iowa Republicans' unanimous consent request was thwarted by Majority Whip Dick Durbin, Democrat, Illinois, who objected to the request. Ernst requested unanimous consent from her colleagues in order to advance Sarah's law to the floor for a vote. During her speech, she pleaded with colleagues to pass her bill, recalling the death of Sarah Root and also referencing the recent murder of Lake and Riley, both at the hands of illegal immigrants. The bill would require ICE to take into custody illegal immigrants who are arrested and charged with causing the death or serious injury of another. This was reiterated by Ernst during her speech, saying it would merely require ICE to detain, just detain, otherwise deportable illegal immigrants charged with killing or seriously injuring another person. Durbin said the bill would detain victims of trafficking or domestic abuse who are charged with crimes. According to him, it would deprive immigrants of the due process that everyone is afforded. Well, except for Donald Trump, of course. We know due process doesn't get afforded to Donald Trump. But here we go again. This is just calling for people who aren't even in this country legally. They're not supposed to be here anyhow. And then they commit a rape. They are accused of molesting children, and to simply say, since they're already not in the country legally, and we have victims here and evidence that they committed a rape, maybe we should just detain them. Just detain them until we can figure out what to do next. And the Democrats blocking that. No, because we have to think about the rights of the illegals who are in this country raping, murdering, molesting. Yet again, the American people, even murder victims and rape victims, take a back seat to rapists and murderers who are in this country legally. There's been a lot of focus lately on this program of the deplorable anti-humanitarian absurdity of the efforts by the Democrat Party. And so one could easily listen and think, well, this is a show all about Republicans, yay. But if you've listened to the show long enough, you know that certainly is not the case, particularly with the Republican establishment. There are plenty of well-earned criticisms, to put it mildly, that the Republican Party gets. So this isn't about, well, here's what Republicans did, so it's bad. But for Pete's sakes, people, I don't care what political party you are, and I know that has become a cliched statement, but who in their right mind, particularly those who once upon a time were referred to as bleeding heart liberals, you notice you don't hear that phrase very often any longer? Bleeding heart liberal, that was a term that identified those within the Democrat Party because they seemed as if they we just care so much. We care so much. And they erroneously tried to remedy the plight of the innocent who are downtrodden by way of government programs. That was their answer for everything. The government needs to help because we care. We care. Our hearts are bleeding for them. You don't hear that term much any longer, do you? How can you? When it's the left that tells people who live in the inner cities, we're going to push so you have less law enforcement. Oh, crime goes up. That's your problem. How can the left be called bleeding heart liberals when there are 83,000 children of color who are missing in this country due to the open border, yet they say nothing whatsoever? How can they be called bleeding heart liberals when increasingly we are seeing the most vulnerable, women, young women, children, being raped, being abused, being murdered by people who have not only been allowed into this country illegally, but been caught for other violent crimes and then let go, yet they say nothing? In fact, they stand in the way of laws that would start holding some of these people accountable. I mean, the coldness of the left, the clinical approach they take to human beings any longer. Katie Hobbs, the Democrat congresswoman who recently came in third in the jungle primary for the U.S. Senate race out in California just last week, regarding the most recent murder of a young woman at the hands of somebody that was in this country illegally, caught and then released to murder. So, well, we shouldn't change immigration policy just because of one little incident. By the way, I can't. She's out there blaming conspiracy theories and Adam Schiff, who took first place, Republican Gravy taking second in that. That it was big money conspiring against her and so forth. I can't help but believe that it didn't have something to do with her comment. The cold, clinical comment from the political party that, when it suits them, says if it saves just one life, suddenly says just because it would save a life or two. I think that there are these moments when sometimes Republican voters fear that the general public at large will slowly forget as we get to November how depraved, negligent, and dangerous the Democrats have been when it comes to illegal immigration. And maybe they'll start to think, well, this is a Washington problem more than it is a Democrat problem. But then you have Democrats block legislation that would just detain illegals who have committed rapes and murders because they're worried about their rights. And then it offers up the opportunity for Americans to be brought back into reality and recognize, yep, that's the Democrat Party 2024. Far cry from the party that once upon a time proudly wore the label as Bleeding Heart because they claimed that they cared about victims. It's amazing how, much like the term men and women and secure and successful economy, they've completely switched the definitions, and now victims are the criminals and the criminals are the victims. It's amazing that it is even considered a single-digit race between the two presidential candidates at this point. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Quick story time about Quick Draw Gun in Monette. I know I've mentioned this before, but the husband, he's in the military. And a couple months ago, he expressed that he wanted to do a little more firearm training just so, he could have that under his belt. So we decided to take a trip down there to Quick Draw Gun in Monette, and Brad was there. He helped us out, and the husband explained to Brad that he uses the M16 in the military, and he wanted something as similar as they could possibly make it. So they were able to customize an AR-15 with tons of accessories from optics to even the sling, and it is now a tool that helped the husband in between those military training dates. So whether you are looking to purchase your first ever firearm, you're wanting to add to your firearm collection, or maybe you're wanting to customize your next purchase with either accessories or even Cerakoting or laser engraving, Quick Draw Gun in Monette is the place to go. And if you have any questions, you can give Brad down there a call today. You can find all of that contact information for Quick Draw Gun under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Someone helpfully texted in. I was referencing Katie Porter, the congresswoman who came in third in that U.S. Senate race. Is actually, I said Katie Hobbs. I was talking about Katie Hobbs. She's the governor of Arizona who recently vetoed the legislation that would have held illegal immigrants accountable for trespassing in this country illegally. She vetoed the legislation in order to protect them. So that's Katie Hobbs. Katie Porter was the congresswoman from California. That on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Oh, speaking of Pyramid Roofing Company, they are sponsors of this year's March bracket. This year is Biden's Best Moments. And the winner of this year's bracket will get a 10-ounce silver depiction of, it's one of the sort of flat plates, if you will, of Mount Trumpmore. It is Mount Rushmore with a fifth face of President Donald Trump on there, 10 ounces of silver. And every week that you participate in the bracket, this week you go through and you'll go through and choose of your favorite Biden moments. And there's video and audio of those moments, so you'll get a refresher memory-wise, or perhaps some of those moments you haven't seen. And it'll be the first time for you every week as we narrow it down that you cast your votes will be an entry for you, and then randomly one of those entries will be drawn for that winning. That is at ksgf.com. The crime problem that we have in this country, it is a cultural problem for individual people. There's a number of reasons people commit crimes. You have some people that commit crime because there's just something really wrong with them. But there's also a portion of the population that it's nurture, the way they were raised, not necessarily specifically in the home, but in the community. There's some areas of the community, and culturally, specifically in blue cities, we see culturally there is a raising of people, an atmosphere that criminals are not held accountable. And they know it. And one of the ways that the Democrats who run these cities are trying to counter it by saying, well, arrests are up. They don't care about getting arrested. When that very day, they're just back out on the street. And they can plea out. They know there's a culture in which the people who work hard and obey the law are the people that have to worry most about government. When you hear the story, business owners, they get fined because of this, fined because of that. People have to worry about getting audited for their taxes. Somebody wants to build a fence on their private property, and the government puts them through hell. You have these environments that are created in which your honest, hardworking people are the ones who worry about government. And the criminals, they don't care. It doesn't matter to them because they know they don't have to worry about it. Oh, you're going to arrest me again? Okay. I'll be out by the end of the day. Increasingly, this is what these criminals who are being arrested are outwardly telling law enforcement. There's an issue when it comes to the home itself. When you have an environment in which there's no, quote, right or wrong, there's no accountability for misbehaving, you're going to get violence. People don't care about other people, and they know the punishment isn't enough for them to say it's not worth it. The problem with the problem being as deep-seated and cultural as it is that it is not something that you can just come up with a program to fix it. And unfortunately, this is what happens, particularly when you have communities that are led by people on the left. They will, let's just come up with a program. Let's come up with a neat idea. We continue to see Springfield become more and more left in their response to, among other things, crime. And this headline here, city leaders discuss potential solutions to youth gun violence. Now, of course, as usual, they don't seem to concern themselves with focusing on violence that doesn't involve guns, violence, just physical abuse, spousal abuse, people who are killed with knives, beat with baseball bats, people who, they always just want to focus on the gun part, which I think is a disservice to victims of crime. But that aside, in the article, some of the ideas for potential solutions. A midnight basketball league. Giving monetary incentives for people to turn in their guns and opportunities for teens to express themselves through music. If anyone really genuinely believes that these are the things that are going to somehow start turning things around when it comes to the deep-seated and widespread cultural issues that are causing people to care so little about other human beings that they will commit crimes against them, then they are unfortunately missing. And I'm not saying that they're bad people. This is part of the problem that we have in this country today, is we convince people that doing little things like this somehow is going to make a change. And not only does it not, but because it lulls people into this false sense that we're doing something, the problem continues to get worse. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Solid Democrat bloc helping Speaker Johnson push yet another kick the can down the road, continuing resolution in Missouri. Burleson and Alford, the only two Republicans that voted against more of the same, spending us into oblivion. Every other Republican joined with Cori Bush and Emmanuel Cleaver to vote yes. See you tomorrow morning at Scramblers. It's a wonderful Friday morning for first responders. See you for free breakfast. I'm Nick Reed.